Hello, welcome back to Astro Mary, and my name's Mary English, and this podcast is all about astrology, and I am a professional astrologer. I've been in private practice for coming up for nearly 20 years. How scary is that? And I work privately with clients, and I work via Skype, and I work over the phone, and I work face to face. So if you ever need a reading, do get in contact. It's mary@maryenglish.co.uk, or whiz over to my website maryenglish.com, where there's loads of information on there, all the different things that I do. Now, this week we're going to be discussing aspects. Dom, 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 dom. And this sometimes is a subject that people can find that little bit more difficult. And I suppose the reason is because we're now going to get into maths. Who likes maths? Nobody does. And but the nice thing is you don't have to remember the maths. You just have to remember which aspects are more fluffy or easier or better to work with than others. And don't panic if you've got a more challenging aspect, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm only going to be discussing the main aspects this week. Maybe in a later lesson I'll discuss the more unusual ones, but I'm going to be discussing the ones that are most people use and most people will have heard of. So what the heck is an aspect? So an aspect is the mathematical relationship between one planet in your chart and another one. So basically it's how far apart they are as far as degrees go, because we're making a birth chart, we're dividing it into 12 signs of the zodiac and 12 houses, and there's all this maths involved there, and there's 360 degrees into a circle, and there's going to be a relationship between each of the planets that are in there. Now don't forget, I didn't invent astrology, so don't blame me. It was some bloke somewhere along the lines, and it all got developed by this one and that one, and everybody chatted about things. But if you think about it, everything has got maths. Math, as they say in America. Everything's got some sort of mathematical relationship to something else. You know, if you say that you've got one dog and then you've got another dog, then you've got two dogs. Yeah, I haven't got two dogs, I've only got one, but I'd love to have another one to tell my husband. And so the thing with astrology is, because we're already using maths, we're dividing the circle into 360 degrees, we're assuming that each planet in your chart is going to have a relationship with another planet, because we plotted it, we put it on your little map, we've made your birth chart up. So each of those planets are going to be talking to other planets. It's all about conversations. So what we're going to be discussing this week, say, is the different types of aspects. So what is an aspect? An aspect is one planet, say your sun. So you've got sun, I'll just give myself as a quick example here. I've got sun sign Pisces, get me, 12th sign of the zodiac, the floppiest one of the lot. And I have moon in Gemini. So my sun is in Pisces and my moon is in Gemini. So what relationship do those two planets have to each other? And it's very enlightening once you learn about the relationships. Now, this section of astrology is going deeper into what astrology is all about and how it is for you, and what it means. And the lovely thing about learning astrology is you learn so much about yourself. Oh my goodness, you can never learn too much about yourself, you know. One of the funny things is when people finish my course, the thing at the end of it, I didn't realise so much, you know, that astrology is so interesting. Well, the only reason it's flipping interesting is because you learned about yourself. Oh yes, you get to learn about other people and all the rest of it, but initially when you first start studying astrology, you look at a chart and you think, oh well, that's my chart and I've got this bit here and that bit there, and what does it all mean, and it means this, and the aspects is giving us more of an idea of the internal relationships you have with the different aspects, wrong word, the different relationships of your psyche. So when we say the sun represents the ego and the moon represents the emotions, in my case they're astrologically called a square. So what's a square? So a square is when a planet is 90 degrees apart from another planet. Now, before we get totally into this, I'll give you all the degrees and the aspects. But what we need to remember is in astrology we have to use maths, and something only has a relationship to something else if it mathematically is within what we call an orb of a maximum of 8 degrees. Yeah, so it's 360 degrees in a circle, and if we're saying that my sun sign is 15 degrees, and I can't remember my moon sign, oh my goodness, how many degrees that is, I'll just tell you, hold on, I'll have a check. So my moon is in Gemini, and we need to make sure that it's not more than 8 degrees apart from the aspect of my sun sign, which is 15 degrees. And let's just have a quick looky-see. So click here, show your chart, bing, bang, bong. Because if it's any bigger than that, it's not going to be a degree. Do you know what I mean? If something's like not forming an aspect, it ain't a degree. Yes, so my sun sign is 15 degrees Pisces and my moon is 17 degrees Gemini. So between the signs of Pisces and Gemini, there's only 2 degrees difference there. And we can allow in astrology what we call an orb, so a maximum of 8 degrees difference. So say, for instance, my sun sign was 15 degrees Pisces, but my moon was 29 degrees, because you can have 30 degrees for each sign of the zodiac. Say my moon was 29 degrees Gemini, it would not be having an aspect relationship between the sun and the moon. Those two planets would not be having a conversation. And I tend to liken the relationships between the planets as a conversation. Like, is my sun sign talking to my moon sign? Do they have an easy conversation with each other? And in my case, they don't, because a square is what we call a challenging aspect, and a 90-degree aspect. An aspect is just another word for degree and the number of it. So a square aspect, which is what I have, isn't a fluffy one. It's a more, inverted commas, challenging one. So this would mean, it's amazing when I found out about it. I found out about my chart, and it wasn't until much later on I realised that my sun and my moon are square to each other, which means, me personally, I don't find it too easy understanding or getting a grasp of how I feel. Yeah, and people, when their sun and their moon are opposite each other, so an opposition, so if 90 degrees is a square, an opposition is going to be double a square, 180 degrees. Yeah, so if my sun and my moon were opposite each other, it'd be an even worse relationship, because that means that they're further apart from each other. So say, for instance, I had sun sign Pisces 15 degrees and moon sign Virgo at 17 degrees, they'd be opposite to each other on my chart. It's like I've got no idea about how I feel, but in my case it's square. Yeah, so the aspects, just go back to the beginning again, that there are 5 main aspects. A conjunction, and actually the words that we use in astrology, those are English words that mean the same thing. When you say something is conjunct something, that's an astronomical term. It means it's together or next to or very near to. So a conjunction is, I've got clients that have got sun and moon conjunct. So maybe they've got sun sign Gemini and moon sign Gemini, and they're within 8 degrees to each other, and so that would be a conjunction. And if your sun and your moon are conjunct, there is in Indian astrology they call it combust. You know, the sun will burn the moon. But anyway, conjunction is very near to each other. So the two things are close. Then the next one, and that's 0 degrees, by the way, up to a maximum of 8. A sextile is 60 degrees. So a square at 90 degrees is, inverted commas, challenging, but a sextile, which is 60 degrees, so remember 60 and sex, they start with the S. That's how to remember it. So 60 degrees apart. That's a more fluffy aspect. Now, I'm just checking out our dear Queenie and seeing what she's got. Whoopsie, let me just clunk up her chart here, and it's going to take forever to load. While I'm talking, I've only got 20 minutes to talk to you. She hasn't got a single sextile in her chart, so we'll ignore her for a minute. Let me use some of my chart example volunteers. Let's see who's got a sextile. Okay, so let's go for Celia Stewart. Have you got any sextiles? Zoom in. Brum. Have you got a sextile in your chart? Let's have a look. And the symbol for a sextile looks like a little star. star. And yes, you do. So in Celia's case, she's got Sun sign Scorpio and Mars sign Capricorn, and they are sextile to each other. So that's a nice friendly thing. So her Mars is about action, aggression, and energy. The Sun is who you are. If they form a nice friendly aspect, so we either talking about as helpful or challenging, in her case helpful, then that means that you won't deplete your own personal energies. You'll be able to maximize them. So that's nice. And so the next aspect is the square, which we discussed. That's 90 degrees apart, and that is it's challenging, and we'll give you a keyword for it: creates fiction. So a conjunction unifies, a sextile supports, a square creates fiction. The next one is a trine, and the symbol for that looks like a little triangle. So a trine is 120 degrees, so one planet is 128 degrees apart from another one, and that assists. So a trine is fluffy, and dear old Queenie, so she has where's your chart gone, Queenie? Sun sign Taurus. I noticed she had a trine. She's got Venus to Pluto, which isn't a very fluffy aspect relationship. She's got Venus in Pisces and Pluto in Cancer, and yes, they are a nice trine to each other, so they're chatting. So Venus is about love and Pluto's about deep change, and in her case it's easy, so it's an assisting aspect. And then an opposition opposes and again is challenging. So the friendly aspects are sextile and trine, and the more challenging ones are square and opposition, and a conjunction is also a friendly one depending on the planet. I really wouldn't say that Sun conjunct Pluto was a friendly aspect, because even though the Sun is a nice friendly planet and Pluto's okay, but have it too near to your sun sign, you might find that, depending on what sign it's in and where it's located, you might find that you can get a bit obsessive or a bit obsessed about stuff, because Pluto's about deep change and transformation. So good old Queenie, what aspects has she got? So predominantly nothing. She's got Moon trine her Mercury, because her Moon is in the sign of Leo and her Mercury is in the sign of, where's her Mercury gone? Oh gosh, she's got Mercury in Aries. They're both in fire signs. And there's, do you know, isn't it amazing, the Queen's got hardly any personal planet aspects. Isn't that spooky? So if you haven't got any personal aspects in your chart, you're very unself-aware. The ones people, do you know, I can't remember the name of the actor now, but he always sort of plays a psychiatrist, or he's always going to see a psychiatrist. His name come to me in a minute. He's Jewish, and he's always in a terrible dilemma about things. I swear he must have millions of aspects in his chart. So the more aspects you've got, either the more self-absorbed you might be, or the more self-aware. Depends on where you look at it. So go to astro.com, get your chart up, and the aspects are shown in the there's a little grid, and in the grid, and the grid is shaped like a little triangle. So in that grid there, you'll see the symbols going down from top left to bottom right: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and then in the columns, because the columns are relationships between one planet to another, you'll see the symbols. So the challenging ones are always written in red, and the friendly ones are always written in blue. And I say in the Queen's case, the squares that she's got is Mars square Saturn, but I really wouldn't worry about that. Jupiter square Saturn, you know, those planets are too far away from each other in the zodiac to be a problem. But if, say, for instance, your Sun was square your Saturn, that would be more challenging. But in Queenie's case, she's got, it's all her aspects are mostly from Mars down to Neptune. Her Pluto only forms one aspect, which, as mentioned earlier, is to her Venus. So have a little look, and don't fret about whatever ones you've got, but do read the analysis of them. I think astro.com will give you something about your aspects somewhere, but keeping in mind the maths of it, if it's the degree is more than 8 degrees apart, it ain't going to happen. And actually, in this case, it doesn't matter what house system you're using, because those degrees are mathematical, they're universal. The house system won't come into it. Yeah. And even if you're not using astro.com, most charts that you produce, whatever program you use, will have the grid showing the aspects between one planet and another. And I wouldn't say that astrologers get too caught up with it with their clients. It's not a great thing, but as I say, in my case, if I were working with a client and they've got Sun conjunct Pluto, I go, what are you doing about your obsessiveness? And they go, oh, I'm not obsessed. And then you close the question and you realise that they are. Yeah, it's not something that is that important unless it's something very, very dramatic, because you've got 10 planets in your chart. They're hopefully communicating with others. Now, I did need to point out, if you're indigo, so if you were born between 1979 and 1999 and your chart is very one-sided and you're a winter baby from the signs of Virgo through to Pisces, so that doesn't include Aries to Libra, it does Aries to Leo, beg your pardon, Aries to Leo. If you're those signs of the zodiac, you are not going to have very many aspects in your chart. You're mostly going to have conjunctions and possibly a sextile and a trine. You're not going to have any oppositions unless you've got moon, because the moon does move and change sign every day. There's a lot of examples of cluster charts on my website, and the link to it is best way to get there is go to maryenglish.com. Let me see if I can get you there easily. Go to maryenglish.com, scroll down, and where it says indigos, so if you click on that, it'll take you to the birth charts of indigo children, which is a lovely article that I wrote millions of years ago, gosh, more than 20 years ago, about people with cluster charts. And I will devote a whole podcast to indigo, so don't worry, I'm not ignoring you indigo people. But people that are indigo, they're very, 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 very unlikely to even have an opposition in their charts. Yeah, so they're only probably going to have conjunctions, sextiles, and possibly a square. Not too much else, because the planets are just too near to each other to form any aspects. Yeah. So I hope you have a fab week. We'll be talking, I don't know what I can do next week. So we've done aspects this week. Oh, we're going to do things like grand trines and kites and chart shapes. So we talked about the shape of the planets in your chart. Next week we'll talk, because an aspect between planets will cause another shape. So we'll talk about aspect shapes next week. So have a fab week. If you'd like to learn astrology with me one-on-one, do get in contact. It's only £25 a lesson, which is not a lot of money, and it's terribly cheap, and I don't even know why I still do it so cheap. I ought to charge more, but I don't. And it's very, very individual, so it doesn't matter what speed you learn at. We'll be learning at the pace that will do right for you, and it's 6 weeks and you'll learn loads, and we'll cover a lot of what we've covered in these podcasts, but as I say, it's individual and personal to you. You'll have fun. So have a fab week. Speak to you next week. Bye bye.